This is not good for our hair follicles. It literally damages your hair follicles. One of the worst. One of the worst. So, we're going to be talking about the hormone collapse in eating disorders and what it does to your hair. Let's break it down. Hair loss in certain eating disorders isn't just about food, it's about hormone shutting down, or in some cases flooding the entire body. Now, hormones are chemicals produced by centers of activity in our body called glands. We have a whole bunch of glands, and they send messages around the body. When it comes to certain eating disorders, there are 5 essential hormones that we need to know about. Because when these go out of whack, namely in anorexia, and also some cases of ARFID, OSFED, Bulimia, hair doesn't stand a chance. My name's Chooks, award-winning psychiatry doctor and best-selling author with a specialist interest in eating disorders. Okay, so the first hormone we need to know about is estrogen. Now, I imagine you've heard of this one before. Estrogen is great. It does a whole bunch of stuff, from regulating the female reproductive system to helping maintain bone, cardiovascular, skin, brain health. It's a bit of a wonder hormone, really, and it's made by the ovaries, but it's also made by body fat. So, guess what happens to estrogen levels when there's dietary restriction, starvation, or not much body fat? Of course, they fall drastically. But when you have a much more favourable hormone environment for hair with good levels of estrogen, it keeps your hair in anagen, that's the growth phase of our hair, for longer and delays exogen when our hair sheds. Now, estrogen itself doesn't directly make hair grow. This is important. Instead, it changes how strongly hair follicles respond to signals that tell them to keep growing or stop growing. At the end of this video, I'll put a link to the video where I explain a bit about the stages of the hair cycle. So this is one of the reasons why women's hair often looks gorgeous in pregnancy when estrogen levels are higher, and why it starts to thin in menopause, when estrogen levels start to plummet. And I mean plummet. Like, if you compare estrogen levels in from a woman's peak reproductive, fertile years to their postmenopausal levels, it's a massive difference. You're talking a 90 to 95% reduction. Now, these postmenopausal levels are very similar to the levels we see in clinic in those with restrictive eating disorders such as anorexia nervosa. This is also why when people lose their periods, their hair becomes vulnerable. Often the loss of a period is a sign estrogen is low. Some places don't routinely check estrogen levels, which is okay, because it often doesn't really necessarily change the management, but we'll talk about what we can do about these levels later. It's important to emphasize that, taking the example of menopause, that's about having older ovaries, whereas in an eating disorder like anorexia nervosa, it's about a reversible situation due to energy deficiency. So needless to say, during recovery, estrogen production and menstrual function often recover. But yeah, estrogen doesn't just act alone. Hair sensitivity is also affected by other hormones. So the next hormone we need to think about is thyroid hormones. I like to explain your thyroid as being the body's accountant. Basically advises us how to spend our energy. And so when there's severe restriction or starvation, typically with the likes of anorexia, bulimia, ARFID and OSFED, it screams, do not spend it on hair. There's just not enough energy for that. Leave it. Forget it. And so the thyroid department detects severe energy deficiency, slows your metabolic rate, the rate at which your body uses energy, and it enters energy conservation mode, moving into something called low T3 syndrome. Okay, so let's get into this a bit, because sometimes going deeper makes it easier to understand what's going on. So your thyroid produces something mainly called T4 hormone. Now, T4 is largely inactive. It moves around, and when it gets to different areas of the body, it converts to T3 hormone. Now, T3 is active. So converting T4 to T3 takes energy. So when there's starvation, your body deliberately reduces conversion of T4 to the more active T3 hormone to conserve calories and to save energy. Up to 8 to 10 people with moderate to severe anorexia have low T3. And what people often don't realize is that hair follicles are among the most metabolically active tissues in the whole body. And so reducing T3 thyroid hormone has a huge impact. It slows hair follicle cell division, shortens the growth phase, pushes follicles into the resting phase far quicker. So you get these fine, weak hair shafts. So widespread thinning and way more shedding happens across the scalp. Thyroid levels are normally part of a regular blood screen and so should be done routinely. Hey guys, Dr. Chooks here. I hope you're enjoying today's video. Some of you have been asking me to do a video explaining the timeline that we expect with recovery. Recovery of hormones and recovery of your hair. How long should we expect before our hair starts to grow back? I know this understandably worries a lot of you, so I will be doing that soon. Make sure you subscribe so you can get it as soon as it drops. Others of you have been asking, how can I sort out my dysfunctional eating? Why can't I stop binging? Why is my body doing this? Why is my hair falling out? What do I do? My loved one is disappearing in front of my very eyes. I get so many of these questions. That's why I started this channel, for you, your friends, your family, to clear up a lot of the misinformation out there and to answer all of your burning questions when it comes to body and eating issues. But I need your help. Let me know in the comments those burning questions or topics you want covered. You know what we say here, if it's burning, we're learning. Let me know and I'll get straight to answering those for you. Back to the video. Now, the next three hormones are very interesting and massively under-discussed, considering they have a collectively significant impact on hair growth. So the next hormone is cortisol, our stress hormone. Now, this is produced by the adrenal glands, which sit on the top of each kidney. Now, when our body's under prolonged energy deficit and stress, for example, in ARFID or anorexia, our cortisol levels shoot up. Now, this is pretty clever, really, because more cortisol helps maintain our sugar and energy levels. But the problem is, cortisol, this is not good for our hair follicles. It literally damages your hair follicles. One of the worst. Cortisol causes vasoconstriction, which narrows the blood supply to our hair. It causes low-grade inflammation around our hair follicles, increases protein breakdown. It lowers the amount of zinc and iron and other lovely minerals to our hair. This is partly why when people are really stressed and continuously, I'm not talking about stress of missing a bus or your football team losing, I'm talking about the chronic stress, it causes your hair to fall out. This whole process and sudden hair loss is something I've talked about before, called Telogen effluvium. Checking cortisol is a simple blood, saliva or urine test, depending on what we're looking for. Normally, cortisol follows a pretty consistent daily rhythm, highest in the morning, lowest at night. But in anorexia, for example, evening levels even stay high. Right, so the fourth hormone is IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor 1, given its name because structurally, it's a bit like insulin and has some similar biological actions. It's made by the liver and is really important for you guys to know about because it's essential for good hair follicle growth. In fact, it's great for growth in general. I guess the name gives it away. But seriously, it's a pretty powerful hormone. So impactful that for decades they've been trying to make it synthetically. They found that it stimulates bone growth, increases muscle mass, which is why it's strictly banned in sports, and helps cells across our body repair themselves and regenerate, hair cells included. IGF-1 improves the amount of blood and nutrients that can get to our hair follicles. It keeps them growing for longer and protects them from spontaneously dying off. IGF-1 is seriously low in anorexia. A decent study found that severe anorexia can produce up to 70% below the expected levels of IGF-1. The more severe the starvation and energy deficiency, the lower the IGF-1 levels tend to be. Last but not least, the fifth hormone that's essential to think about when we're thinking about hair and eating disorders is leptin. Now, you may have heard of this as the satiety hormone, sending signals to our brain when we're full to curb our hunger. But what's less known about leptin is that it plays a quiet but powerful role in hair growth. It tells the hair follicle whether energy availability is safe. Think of it as the fuel gauge light on a car or motorbike. If it says empty, growth stops. So like estrogen, leptin is also produced by body fat, and so surprise, surprise, is low in eating disorders like anorexia, where energy deficit is high. So when there's low body fat, there's low leptin. When leptin is low, the body thinks there's famine, naturally, meaning hair growth is suppressed. It's not important. When leptin rises with recovery, hair growth can kickstart again. You know, in clinic, we don't routinely check leptin. It's a simple blood test, but it's normally done to investigate unexplained weight gain and check for potential leptin resistance. Right, I really hope that's helped, guys. But remember, even when you start eating, even when hormones start stabilizing, hair doesn't immediately grow back. Why? Because hair follicles won't regrow until the body feels consistently safe. And so what actually restores that safety? You know, what nutrients matter? What lab tests should we check? How long does it all take for hormones and hair to improve? I'll be making a video walking you through exactly how hair regrowth happens in recovery, step by step. So make sure you subscribe so you can check out when that video drops. Take care, guys, and hold on to hope.